Welcome to the first of 3 videos that will help you walk through how to create a Google form and use that form to give your students feedback. So the first part of this video is going to show you how to create a Google form, and I've created a PowerPoint here that will walk you through the steps over here on the left, and then I'll go ahead and show you how to actually do those steps in a Google tab over here on the right hand side. So if you like to follow along in a stepwise process and maybe you're a little bit behind in what's happening over here, then you can always follow along with these numbers here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into Google Drive and we're going to create a new Google form. And so I have a new open tab here. I'm going to click and I'm going to go into my une.edu Gmail access or Google access. And from there I'm going to navigate to the drive. And once I'm in the drive, then you'll see this red button, and I'm going to create a new document, and that document is actually going to be a Google form. So I'm going to create a new Google form. When I create that new Google form, you're going to see it's going to open in a new tab, and we get a lot of different options here that we can use to help set up this Google form. So just sort of advancing over here, the first thing you'll see is require a UNE login to view the form and automatically collect the respondent's UNE username. So I like to use this especially when I'm using the form to collect homework, because it allows me to sort of verify that the person that's logged in is in fact logged in under that UNE username, and it also allows me to collect their email address, which I will use on the back end of this feature to be able to send the feedback back to the student. And that's really one of the key critical issues when it comes to collecting homework, is being able to actually give that student feedback that's helpful for them to be able to modulate their learning so that they understand where they may have made mistakes. So typically I'll click require a UNE login to view the form and automatically collect their username. And then we have a couple options here where we can title our form, we can choose the types of questions we'd like to edit or answer, we'd like the students to answer. We can add additional questions, so you'll see here I can add, let's say, another multiple choice question. So here was the first question, here's our second question, here's our third question, and they all sort of line up this way. I'll get rid of those for now. We'll come back to our first question. And then when you're done, you would hit this done button. So moving forward, this is kind of what I already described here. You can set your access, that's in these form settings. You can name the form, and then you can create new questions. For right now, I had in these instructions uncheck the box for now because I was teaching this to people who were outside the UNE system. So certainly if you wanted to use this and the people you were sending the form to didn't have a UNE email address, then maybe you don't want to require that login. But these are just settings that you can begin to play around with. So for this example, I'm giving everyone an assignment, which is to create this Google form. And so I'm going to title the form Metric Guess, so you can follow along on the left-hand side of what the things I'd like you to do as you create this form. So we'll title it Metric Guess. And you're just clicking in that box and editing that field. And for the question title, we're going to create a text question. So right here, this is a multiple choice question. I'm going to change that to a text question. And that text question is going to collect their email address. Now, because I was doing this outside of UNE, I couldn't automatically collect their username and email address, so I set this one up to collect email address. So what is your email address? And then that person, when they get the form, will type their answer in here. Now I want to create a multiple choice question that collects the respondent's age based on ranges. And so that's going to be a multiple choice question. So I'm going to add an item. It's going to be a multiple choice. And the question will be, what is your age? And I've got some options here. It's 20 to 30 years. Then I've got 30 to 40 years, 40 to 50 years, and greater than 50 years. Then I'd like to create a text question that collects the respondent's height in inches. So we're going to do a text question, and we're going to ask, what is your height in inches? And they'll they'll put their answer there. And the next one is a text question that asks the respondent to guess their height in centimeters. So, how tall do you think you are in centimeters? And I chose this because most people know what their height is in inches, but not many people know what their height is in centimeters. So the learning component here for these students would be how well are they able to apply maybe some mental math or some practical guessing to go between inches and centimeters. So I'll be comparing what is probably a true value in inches to a guessed value in centimeters here. Okay, so then moving on, when we're done, we're going to click done and we're going to share this form. So we have down here ways that we can share this form. So I could show the students when they're done and they hit the done button, they'll see a page that says your response has been recorded. Now, I could give them a link to submit another response, but I only want one from each student. This might be helpful if you're doing homework and you want to allow students to submit more than one attempt. Maybe they submit one and then they're like, oh, wait a second, I did the math wrong. I want to submit a second time. So this is an easy way to allow them to submit a second response. You could show them a public link so that they could see everybody else's responses. So sometimes that's helpful. They might be able to get a sense as to where's the class collectively going with certain answers. I choose not to do this because you're collecting everybody's usernames and their email addresses, and I just feel like it's probably not all that helpful for everyone in the class to know every other answer that someone submitted. Sometimes it makes people feel a little subconscious. And then you could allow responders to edit the responses after submitting. Typically, I don't do this. I usually like them to just submit a whole nother response if it's homework. And if this is something that I might be grading, then I certainly don't want to allow them to edit their responses because I want to know what's their best effort when they submit. So then I'm going to hit send form. And this is a way that I can send the form directly to those students. So I might type in here, COP class of 2017, and then I can send it to the entire class that I might be teaching. If you don't have a quick way to email, then you can always get a URL. And I like to use these short URLs. So you notice here's this big, long, gobbledygook website that would be really hard for someone to really type into their browser up here. This would be a pain. So you can shorten that URL, and Google will automatically come up with a code that is a shortened version of what this website looks like. And that's just a lot easier for people to read and see and things like that. And so then you can go ahead and hit send if you're sending it to email, or I can take this and I can hit the Control-C button and copy it, and then I can go to my email and I can email it out to my students, or what I'll often do is I go to Blackboard and I post this shortened web link for the students and say the homework is now posted. Please click on the link for you to be able to access the homework. Okay, so let's call this done. So now I'm done with all of these, and presumably I've gone to Blackboard and posted that link. And so these are the different ways that you can sort of share that access to your students. So share via the link, share via the email, and we talked about these confirmation page settings over here. So just some ways to read all that information. And so if you're doing this and you're practicing, find a friend or find a buddy or do it yourself. And what I ask is, share that form with yourself via email, share the form with, a neighbor or a colleague, so that way people can begin to respond to the email and fill that form out. So let's say I have in my clipboard, I've got that form link. And so say I got an email address and I clicked on that link. And this is what my form looks like if I were to get that form in email and click on the link. So this is what your students will be seeing, or whomever you sent that form to, on their end. And so these are all the questions that we created in our form, and we're going to begin to fill those out. 60 and, I don't know, 130 centimeters, and then you can hit submit. Great. And so you see your response has been recorded. That's what we decided we would put on our prompt screen when we were done. And so now your students have submitted a form. So that's going to be the first email, which is really just putting the form together and how to share that form with your students or colleagues to begin to collect their feedback. In the next video, we'll actually begin to look at what do those responses look like as you're getting that information back.